Okay, in our next example, we're going to look at employee attrition. And the data we're going to be looking at comes from a typical HR corporate environment with about 1,400 employees. Right now, for this organization, their employee churn rate is about 16%, so it's pretty high. And what we're going to do with the data is we're going to understand the characteristics of the employees that voluntarily resigned in the previous 12 months. And based on the knowledge we get from that, we're going to build a predictive model that will allow us to predict the current employees that are likely to resign in the coming 12 months. And mitigating employee churn can substantially lower the cost of doing business because typically it costs much more to hire a new employee than keep a good one you already have. So let's go ahead and jump into SPSS Modeler. And let's take a peek at the data. And this data is pretty typical of what you would find in a personnel file of an individual working for your average company out there. But the first field we have is called attrition, and this is whether or not this person quit their job voluntarily in the previous 12 months. We have age, we have how much they travel, how far they live from home, how far they commute each day, education, employee number. This is an ID to identify the employee. Gender, marital status, income, the number of companies they've worked at previously, the number of years they've worked in total, how much training they did in the last year, how long they've been at the current company they work for, your company, how many years they've been in their current role, how long it's been since their last promotion, and how long have they been with their current manager. So let's do some exploratory analysis and some visualization to see if we can't find some patterns and trends in the data. Okay, this first chart we'll look at shows the relationship between employee attrition and distance from home. And this kind of makes sense. The longer somebody's commuting to work every day, the more likely they are to quit. That makes sense. The longer somebody's been working, like in total years of working, the less likely they are to resign. And that kind of makes sense too. The more money they make, the less likely they are to attrit. And that kind of makes sense because, one, you have a lot more responsibility when you're older and you have more income, or when you have more income, typically you have more responsibility. And also, it's a lot harder to find jobs that fit this into the pay scale. So. And this is a bar chart that just shows the overall attrition rate. See, it's about 16% compared to about 84% of people who did not attrit the previous year. This shows the relationship between attrition and business travel. And those who travel frequently are much more likely to attrit than those that don't. This is the relationship between education and attrition. And it looks like people with a doctoral degree are less likely to attrit than those, for example, with some college. Marital status, single people are much more likely to attrit, and that probably goes back to how much responsibility you have than what we saw in income. Here you have how many times they've trained in the last year, and this is kind of interesting because it looks like there's a big difference between those that had some and none. You know, it's kind of flat here, but there's a big drop off for those that had no training in the last year. It's kind of interesting. Here you have the number of years they've been at the company, and it seems to kind of go down in a decreasing rate. And the longer somebody's been at their current company and they're working for their current employer, the less likely they are to attrit. And that makes sense. Probably happy. This is interesting. The number of previous employers, people that have had 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 employers are much more likely to attrit than those who have less than 5. It's kind of interesting. Makes sense. The longer they've been in the current role, the less likely they are to attrit. And I guess that means they're happy and satisfied with their current job. This was interesting to me because it doesn't seem like there's much relationship between years since your last promotion and attrition. You would expect that there would be. And it could be just something specific about this kind of company and the kind of people that work there. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like there's much of a relationship. There might be a slight increase, but I'm not seeing a big one. And then this is interesting as well, the years with the current manager. Again, it's kind of like zero or some. So it's like this first year, once you get over that first year of working with your boss, that if you can live with them for a year, you can live with them for 10 years, I guess. So that kind of makes sense as well. So that's some good information. This is called univariate analysis. We're looking at, well, it's actually bivariate analysis. We're looking at two variables in combination. But let's do a multivariate analysis. Let's build a model. And building a model in SPSS is actually very simple. You go down here to the modeling tab and just figure out what model you want to use. In this case, we're going to use a decision tree, which is usually a good way to approach problems like this. And specifically, we're going to use a shade decision tree. And building a model in SPSS is very simple. All you have to do is know what you want to predict and what you want to use to predict it. So in this case, we want to predict attrition. And when you want to use those employee attributes to predict attrition. And one thing I'm going to take out is, where did it go? Employee number, because that's just an ID field. That doesn't mean anything. We don't want that mucking things out. So we've got all the variables that we looked at in the univariate or bivariate analysis, and we're going to use those, and we're going to let the computer or the software tell us which one of these factors is important in predicting attrition. And right off the bat, it sifted through all of those different variables and give us a list of the variables in terms of importance. And it looks like the total number of years they've been working is the most important factor. Also the years with the current manager, their marital status, and how much travel they did. Also the number of companies they've worked at shows up in the list. And we can go over here to the viewer and actually see the decision tree, and the shade tree. And what a shade is going to do is it's going to start off with everybody, and it's going to filter through the variables, and it's going to find the one variable that's most significant in terms of predicting your target. And in this case, this was total working years. And it's going to split it up into meaningful groups. So in this case, it split it up into those that work less than 3 years, those that work between 3 and 8 years, and those that work more than 8 years. So people that work more than 8 years have an attrition rate of 10%, 10.615%. People that work less than 3 years have a 38% attrition rate. People that work between 3 and 8 have an 18% attrition rate. And if you want to drill down to the next level, if you look at people who have been working for less than 3 years, for those that have working less than 3 years and have been with their manager for less than a year, they have a 51% attrition rate. And you want to go down another level, those that have been working for less than 3 years, have been with their manager less than a year, and travel frequently, the attrition rate is 85%. So, just looking at this, you can probably think of some ideas or some programs that you might come up with to address attrition. One, you want to look at people and focus on people who are new, people who are right out of school or just started their careers. Those are the ones that you typically lose. Also, for people that you want to look at when people get a new manager, you want to kind of maybe put some programs in place to try to make that transition smoother, so that they figure out that they can work together, and if they can't, step in and maybe find them another manager or find them another role in the organization. Marital status, you can't do much about that, but business travel you can. You can either maybe look for ways to cut down on business travel, or maybe even look for support, to help the families of people that are traveling a lot of business. But I mean, those are just some ideas. But anyway, there are definitely some things you can glean from the shade model that will help you, maybe some programs you can start that would lower your attrition rate. Okay, now that we've built our predictive model, let's see how accurate it is. And what this tells us is that the model is 85% accurate. And what that means exactly is that we took every person that was in our file and we gave them a prediction of attrit or not attrit. And then we took those predictions and we compared it to the actuals. And when we said somebody would attrit and they attritted, or we said somebody wouldn't attrit and they did not attrit, that happened 85% of the time. When we said they would and they did, or they didn't, or we said they wouldn't and they did, that happened 15% of the time. And if you want to go in here and drill into this data and see those actual predictions in the file, they're over here at the end. We added 2 new fields, and this is a prediction of whether or not this person would attrit, and we can compare that directly to the actual. So you can see in this first row, they did attrit, and the model was not correct. It said that they would not. This column right here is a confidence level in this prediction. So we're 71% confident this person will not attrit, or 92% confident that this person will not attrit. Okay, so once we have the model built from looking at the past, we're going to try to project it to our current employees. So we're going to take this file and we're going to project it out to our current employees, or people who are working in our organization right now. That way we can get an idea, we can get a list of people that have a high probability of quitting their job, and we can try to reach out to them and try to do things to make them happy, or see, try to address some of the issues they may be having. So we call that scoring a model. And to score a model in SPSS is really simple. All you do is you actually click on the scoring node right here, copy it, and you paste it, and you drag it down. So the data that we're going to be scoring this is current year data. So these are people that currently are working for the organization. Looks like our previous data set. The only difference is we don't have a field for attrition because they haven't attritted yet. We're trying to predict ones that are likely to attrit. So when we score our model, by connecting it up to the scoring node, we get 2 new fields. We get a prediction of whether or not they're going to attrit and a confidence level in that prediction. So for example, this person, we're 81%, 82% confidence that this person is going to attrit the next year. So this is probably an employee ID 134 that we need to do something about, 137 I think, that we need to do something about and try to address. So just to kind of sum up what we did here, we read it in an Excel file, we did exploratory data analysis and visualization, we built a multivariate statistical model, we gleaned insights from that model to try to come up with some better programs that might help us reduce our attrition rate. We evaluated the model, and we took our current customers, our current employees, and we used the model from the previous year to score them to get an idea of who's likely to attrit in the coming year.